We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
All right, guys, this is another episode of We're Not Marketers. This is Zach, the sales water lad on the mic. Before we introduce our next groundbreaking guest, let's pass off the mic to our fellow co-host, Eric Holland.
Yeah, what's up? I'm Eric. I'm the Franken manager of the group. And for the last little host intro, Gab, take it away.
Gab Bugeaud, sales deck associate. Still doing sales deck. I can't stand it anymore. Passing it up back to Zach.
And by the way, I forgot my title. This is a sales water lad, but let me let you guys in on a little something right here. Our next guest here has an eye and ear to detail. Here, my mic was going in and out. I know, shocking, right? Because we've recorded about 50 plus episodes, but we're not marketers. But who knows if this individual is, because from his background, he started off management consulting. He's led product and growth at Dropbox. He's did a few stints of VP marketing recently at Bill. He's taking on the next challenge, greater than Mount Kilimanjaro, marketing budget. He's looking to protect it for you all. He's got the measuring tape. He's got the abacus. He's got all the tools in the kit right now. Let's introduce it to our next guest here, Pranav Piyush. So excited to have you on.
Thank you, guys. Kilimanjaro is on the bucket list. Someday I actually have to go do that. But for now, I will keep myself happy and entertained with marketing measurement.
Are you a climber?
No, not by any means.
Other than just climbing the ranks of B2B. Give me that.
Yeah, there you go. I'm climbing the corporate ladder. Oh my God, no. No, I like being out there, but I have two young kids and they are 5 and 8, and so the last few years have just been not that adventurous, right? Weekends are like busy with their stuff. So one day when I'm, hopefully the kids are a little bit grown up and I get my weekends back, I can go back and, get out there. So I did I don't think it was the Inca Trail, but it was a 4-day hike in Machu Picchu, like a
oh
day
yes,
ago, and it was awesome. Got to replicate that on every continent.
I was surprised we didn't run into each other. I think I was out there 10 years ago.
There you go. I have a question for you guys. How did the three of you decide to even start this?
Oh, that's a great question.
We were having a very isolated bitch session that resonated around how we feel about our place in the world of B2B tech as product marketers, and it all aligned very well. Let's just start talking about it on some microphones.
Yeah,
it was either a podcast or a musical. We opted for the podcast.
It's a good starting point. Musical might be like season 7.
It's on the roadmap.
Yeah, we're gonna call it Not Marketing.
Love it.
So, Pranav, you know the game here. You know the show. We're gonna pass the mic over to Gab here, and he's got the $1 million question for you.
Pranav, are product marketers actually marketers?
Oh my God, this is a can of worms. So a little bit of context, right? So I was a product manager at once in my career. I've been a VP of product marketing at Bill, and so with no offense intended to my fellow PMM sisters and brothers, I think product marketing is probably a misnomer in the first place. Now, let me explain. Where did product marketing come from? And, I don't have like the definitive history or truth behind it, but it came from this, my perception, my belief is that it came from a dysfunction between product and marketing. And we, collectively as an industry and B2B invented a new thing called product marketing. That was the inception point. Now, why? So to understand product marketing as a role, and is it marketing, is it product, what is it? You have to understand why it was even created and what the source of that dysfunction was. Either marketing drives the business or product drives the business. 90% of businesses, neither is driving the business. And 90% of the PMMs are stuck in that really unfortunate state where neither product nor marketing is in charge of driving growth. And PMMs are the sole warriors of reason and data and research, trying to make sure that product and marketing are enabling growth. Now, I say this in a very extreme way. I don't mean that those product people don't care about growth. I'm not saying that marketers don't care about growth, but there's something missing. And so the whole organization structure in my mind needs to be blown up, and new titles, new names, new functions need to emerge. I can talk more about that. And I didn't answer your question directly, but I don't think product marketers are marketers.
You know, once you said misnomer, I was like, dang, you take me back to 7th grade vocabulary. I was like, ooh. Pranav, more context to that response right there. You said there's something missing. Like, what is that missing link, and what was the specific experience that led you to that realization?
On the other side of the equation, you got salespeople, you got engineers, what have you. None of those people are true GM mentality type of people. In an average case, there are obviously cases where that's not true. My realization was PMM is, in most organizations, even the team that I was leading, mostly just project management. And it was very unfortunate that that was the case. Again, that is not the desire or the intent. It's because everyone, sales, demand gen, product, all think that they are driving the ship. And when you have that lack of clarity on who is the ultimate GM of the business, of the product, of the feature, until you have clarity, PMM's job is absolutely thankless. And it's not a marketing job, it's a project management, consensus driving, keep the trains on the track, get it launched type of a job. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think that it's the highest leverage job. And so my advice to marketers usually is that, hey, if you're going to go into a product marketing role, have this conversation before you take that job of who is accountable, who is the GM, and how are you going to be working with that GM to drive growth? Because if you don't have a direct relationship with that, product marketing is not going to work.
You're filling our cup 100% right now. I don't know if you know, but based on our reaction, like hearing that is very validating. You said that those PMMs, it's becoming project management. We heard a lot about you're becoming an asset creating function. You're just shipping stuff by shipping stuff. If you already had that discussion of like who's the GM, who's the mini CEO, what do you think those product marketers can do to influence the current positioning that people have internally of their role?
Yeah, I think the first thing is having a holistic view of the product journey. And so what that means is your job as a product marketer in a well-functioning organization is to go from the opportunity identification all the way to value capture. And these are like MBA words, but there's real meaning to them, right? What I mean by that is you know your audience better than anybody else, which if you're not talking to 5 customers or at least 3 customers every day, you can't be a PMM. I'm also going to, put everybody on notice a little bit. If you think you're a PMM and you haven't spoken to a customer, it's already the end of the day, you're not a PMM. So let's be very clear about what the product marketing role means. You're constantly talking to customers, not just listening to gong calls, like that's helpful, but you're actually spending time with customers.
I love that.
You're doing the audience research, you're doing the market research, you understand your audience inside out, not just like the needs and the jobs to be done and the benefits, but like, what do they do when they wake up? What's on their home screen on their phone? What's their favorite YouTube shows? You know them at a level that's super deep. That's where opportunities come from. And what I mean by that is when you understand them, when you understand their motivations and their jobs to be done and needs, you can say that, hey, here are the top 3 things that they care about. in their professional lives, and we're doing great on number 2 and number 3, but hey, number 1, we're missing the mark, and here's why. And you take that to your organization, and then it's like, okay, how do you take that opportunity through the process of building a commercially viable business, right? So classic sort of product management thinking. This is also where I say, if you have PMMs and PMs, something's wrong. and if you don't know which one works for the other one, you see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Because I can say the same exact thing that I just said about PMs. A product manager should know their audience inside. If you haven't spoken to a customer, how are you a product manager? So, strong opinions, but I do think that those roles actually are very similar, and they've been created because there was a class of product managers who are like, no, I don't want to do that. So I go set up a product marketing team and they should go do that. I'm going to focus on high value. I'm going to create the product. Like, it's nonsense. I'm going to get hate from all sides after this podcast airs.
Hot takes are very welcome here. It's a safe space for all. That's great.
I love the way you said it. And I just have a quick follow-up question on that, because my take is a great PMM should be able to jump on a demo with the average sales rep and be on par, if not better than that sales rep. Because you understand all of the different contexts, you understand the different department, you understand those feedback loops. So technically, sales should be able to learn from you. And this is the best way to cut off those silos between marketing and sales. But you said something as well in terms of like those PMs. PMs should be talking to the customers. PMM should be talking to the customers. If I'm PMM and I have a discussion with a PM, which is based on a real story, right? And I was like to the head of product, hey, I want to talk to customers. I want to make sure I get on par to you. The answer was, why would you talk to them? I already spoke with them. We don't want to bug them. We don't want to be gatekept by sales. What should be, if I know that my counterpart as a product manager is already in those discussions, already on the field with them, but me as a PMM, I don't get my part of the buffet because there's someone else doing it.
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is where it goes down to, understanding the organization structure. After having done this role, before I even put myself in that position, I would know, what the working relationship is between PM and PMM. So when I took this role at Bill, I was asked to lead the product marketing team and customer marketing team. I just went on a listening tour. I went and spoke to every product leader there was, every sales leader, every marketing leader, and understood what they thought, product marketing's role was. And, that in a larger organization, you have to start there. Like, what is the expectation internally? And guess what? It's going to take you 4 to 6 quarters before you can change that perception. Not going to happen overnight. So you got to pick your battles, right? Okay, product thinks and believes, maybe very earnestly and honestly, that they have all of the research and the customer insights done. All right, fantastic. Let's set up a day-long session where we can go deep into what you have found and the evidence and the proof points that back that up, so we can use that in our marketing for our claims. It's a great way to surface the understanding of the lack of understanding. And I'm not saying this in a political way. I'm literally saying, like, hey, if we're going to say that, 7 out of 10 customers really want this, feature, there's got to be some evidence for it, right? And you have to structure the research in the right way to be able to do it. And so if your product manager or your head of product is somebody who wants to have an evidence-based conversation, then it's going to go well. If it's a HIPPO conversation, the highest paid person's opinion, then, and by the way, that happens 90% of the times, at least that right off the bat. And you can figure out in your career sort of how you navigate that situation. It's like, okay, you're not going to go across the HIPPO, and you'll have to find different ways of influencing the organization. I don't know if that helped, but yeah.
It does help because it lets people know it's not black and white. You got to take those things, and I appreciate that acknowledgement of 4 to 6 quarters. I think there's probably a lot of us who are doing that in-house role who don't know what that influence is going to be like, and it's just good to hear the reality of it. It's not an overnight success.
Pranav, question for you. Go ahead. You can.
I used to send out a survey to all of our cross-functional stakeholders with like 2 or 3 questions of just like, hey, this is, I'd set the stage of like, this is our mission, this is our objective as a product marketing team. How are we doing against that mission and objective? And it was literally just this, 0 to 10 type of scale. And I would get that feedback and be able to see how that perception is either improving or staying the same. And that was the thing that I was tracking quarter to quarter. We tried to get every product marketing team, we had multiple teams, so each pod to have their own metrics. And those metrics were very much sort of aligned with the business that they were supporting. The challenge is that they didn't really have influence over those metrics. So it was good to like say that, hey, these are the metrics that we're going to be looking at, but we didn't have control. And so that's why I always think that product marketing is in an unfortunate situation many times when it comes to, can you actually control the metric that you're trying to influence?
Diving deeper into that point, a former manager of mine in product marketing shared with me the best way to influence a conversation is data. For product marketers who on their LinkedIn say they are data-backed analysts, you know who you are. What is the wrong way of using data to influence an internal conversation?
I would say maybe there are 3 to 4 sort of pitfalls. One is cherry picking data. And what that just means is like you already have a story in your head and you're just trying to prove your point and you find the right data points to make the case and you go present that. The reason it's a pitfall, the reason I think that doesn't work is the smartest people in the room are going to ask you the hard questions about the data behind the data, and you're going to be in a house of cards. So that's like one pitfall. The second pitfall is if you're really sort of data savvy, it's not just the data, it's what generates that data. So I'll give you an example. I could ask you a leading question in a survey and get you to say things a certain way and prove my point. So, I'm going to ask you, hey, was that, that dish was delicious, wasn't it? And you're going to say, yeah. You're not going to say, no, it was absolute garbage when I've already positioned the question as a leading question telling you that it's delicious and I believe it's delicious. So you will be more likely to say, yeah, it was good. And I mark that and say, great, I got data. That's garbage, right? That's garbage data. So the second pitfall is like, what is the process to generate the data that you're looking at? And really being confident in understanding whether it's a survey, whether it's a business process, whether it's your CRM, whether it's, whatever else is usage data, but like, what is the actual mechanism through which that data is created? And most people don't understand that, and they, fall when questioned about that piece. The third thing is, I think this applies to all of marketing. Everyone needs to go take a course on statistics. Most of us did not study statistics when we were learning how to do marketing, whether that was college, whether that was on the job, right? I didn't go to school for marketing, but I learned it on and I never really thought about statistics until like the last maybe 4 to 5 years and how to think about, I did, but in a very sort of isolated way. I thought about it as like A/B testing, I'll apply statistics to it, right? But like the concepts of correlation, causation, uncertainty, what is knowable, like if you go spend 8 hours on YouTube, like just going down the rabbit hole, you will learn so much that you can apply to how you make the case internally about whatever strategy that you're employing. And when you tie all of this together into the scientific process, and what I mean by that is you have a hypothesis. You always start with a hypothesis. And that is a very different way of thinking as opposed to like, here's my goal. No, you're like, nobody cares about your goals. What you care about is like finding, either proving or disproving your hypothesis. I might have a hypothesis that there's demand for a business like Paramark. Now I got to go prove that. If I come to, investors and say, no, I know there is demand, they're going to be like, well, how do you know? And so taking a hypothesis-based approach changes the conversation for marketers because it's no longer about what I think. It's whether I can prove or disprove the hypothesis that I have. It also makes it less personal. It's not about what I think and I feel and I believe. No, here's a hypothesis, and we can either showcase that it works or it doesn't work. Do you have a better hypothesis? Do you have a different hypothesis? Do you want to test? And the moment you open up that conversation, now you've got the whole room engaged. It's like, well, yes, I think I can. I want to test this thing because, and you're like, well, why do you think that's a reasonable hypothesis to even form? Right? Where is that coming from? Tell me about the intuition. Tell me about the market research you've done. So it's a long-winded answer about this data question, but this more rigorous and scientific way of thinking will free up product marketers to not get into the tactical debates that we often get into.
That's an
No, this is
awesome tip.
valuable.
Yeah, and it's like I did study statistics in college, and I don't remember half of it. But what's grinding my gear the most is when I'm with a team, we talk about A/B testing, or people just brought A/B tests, and they're like, "Let's A/B test it." And I'm like, "Guys, we have 150 visitors. Like, there's no way we'll be able to say that we're 95% confident in that hypothesis because there's not enough data to actually prove our point. Correlation doesn't mean causation." A lot of product marketers can take a page of the book of growth marketers to actually draw those hypotheses. Is there a way on how you think that PMMs can bring that kind of whole hypothesis ideas in, I would say, specific situation? For example, if we take messaging, right? Messaging, I'm currently working on something on message testing. A big part of that usually dies by committee. So I'm just curious, how would you approach that for a PMM that never really did any hypothesis, don't really have a knowledge in statistic, and want to just make sure they don't fall under those pitfalls?
Yeah, I mean, positioning and messaging is an interesting one. When you say messaging, do you mean sort of the framework, the hierarchy, the pillars, or you really mean sort of copy?
Eric and I had like a discussion before this call that he was reminding the team that messaging isn't copy, but in that case, I don't mean copy. I mean the framework, the hierarchy of everything, the overall strategy that will support your positioning.
So there are some things that you don't experiment with, and messaging is one of those things. Now, let me explain what I mean. You don't apply sort of A/B testing to that. I don't think that that's a good answer. When you are doing positioning and messaging at the strategy level, at the framework level, my thought process, and I think that this is true for most people, it's much more qualitative in nature. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't require understanding of statistics and science, but it's not the same as running a mass scale A/B test. So I'm sure you've seen this, right? When you do sort of first party research, you go talk to customers, and whether you're starting from an existing sort of baseline of, hey, here are the 5 messaging pillars that we have already had for 5 years, and you go put that in front of customers and you construct a research program to understand their thoughts and feelings about those messaging pillars, you need to do it a certain number of times, and you need to do it a certain number of, get a concentrated mass of your buyer personas, your influencers, or your champions, whatever forms your buying group. And there is a method to that madness. If I only speak to 5 people, and one was the CEO, the other was a head of sales ops, and the third was a marketer, you don't got nothing. So you have to think about, if my buying group is made of these 4 personas, I'm going to make sure that I have at least 8 to 10 of these research, studies done for each of those personas. And so when you think about statistics, it's really just making sure, if you understand the concept of statistical significance, then you're able to kind of draw that into this type of a research process. If you don't, as a naive sort of junior marketer, you could be like, hey, I spoke to people. I spoke to 10 people. And yes, you did. Good job. But that doesn't make it statistically valid. So even for doing, this audience research, there's go ChatGPT it, right? Open up ChatGPT and say, hey, what are some best practices on how do I create research programs for a messaging framework. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. So that's how I think you really have to start thinking about it. And again, there's no excuse for marketers to not be able to teach them this stuff. This is not rocket science. You can pick it up quickly.
It reminds me of a line I heard in Exit 5 podcast of was like Dave Kellogg, is the idea of the dispassionate analyst. Even when you don't have all the necessary context, I think knowing the thought methodology of data analytics and statistics really elevates the conversation. One example that comes to mind for me is that I'm working with a client right now, and we're doing a series of user interviews, and 10 to 15, and I can come to them and say, hey, this gives us a perspective, but it will give us signals, but it won't give us a definitive unless we continue, like you said, if we interview 8 to 10 of the same personas. And that helps like really guide the conversation, because especially when we're in a space where it's a game of opinion, like you said, the strongest opinion typically wins.
No, the most highest paid opinion.
HIPPO. I did not make that term up. It's somewhere on the internet, so I don't know where I learned it from. But to add on to that point, you want to marry the qual and the quant, right? So people also like don't think about this enough. Like, okay, you did your qual, you did 30 interviews, you figured out your messaging pillars for like these, 5 audiences, 4 audiences, whatever it might be. It is not that hard to turn those into 5 different ads on LinkedIn in an ABM way, each for each audience, the persona that you care about, and see your engagement rate from those ads. You will have answers within a week or 2 of which messaging is actually resonating, right? And now you can go back and to your research lab and say, okay, we our qual said 5. Our research telling us it's actually only 2 things that are resonating. The other 3 are like, yes, it came up in qual, but either something's messed up, right? Either the copy execution didn't meet the bar, or maybe the broader market doesn't believe that, right? So you take that iterative approach of going from qual to quant. Again, the goal is not conversions in those ads. The goal is to understand whether your message resonates. And so you're doing it for research purposes.
Clarifying question for you. I'm going to say these 2 words, and I'm curious what your immediate reaction is. Activity metrics.
I have nothing against them. I think they're great.
Really?
Yeah.
So we're gonna dive deeper in there. Now we're gonna go a little bit in the deep end. Let me put on my life jacket on real quick, because
let's do it.
Activity metrics with collateral. I'm marketing program. We are doing a QBR. Zach, how many one pages have we created this quarter?
Okay, that type of an activity metric. So thanks for clarifying that. Nobody's business. I think that's a waste of time to even report on that. When I say activity metrics, I actually mean the customer's activity metrics. And so what is the customer doing? And so, engagement metrics, great example of this is if you've got a whole bunch of resources on your website, I actually think qualified consumption is a metric that more product marketers, content marketers should be looking at. What that means is a blog post that has a session with a blog post that's more than 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that's gold. A video view of more than a minute, that's gold, right? A podcast download and listen, that's gold. And so you do want to look at those customer activity metrics, because those are leading indicators of what you're putting out there in the world are actually sort of being consumed or not. People rail against open rates on emails. They have their problems. It's not accurate. But if your open rates, if your click-through rates on your emails are going up and to the right, that's a good thing. It's not a vanity metric. If your total traffic is going up, it's a good thing. It's not a vanity metric. So that's what I meant when I was thinking about activity metrics. But yeah, how many one-pagers did I create? Probably less important. In some cases, it's kind of important, but not okay, let's look at BDRs and SDRs, right? I think activity metrics are important for them because that's the game. It's kind of very similar to your engagement rate on an ad, right? If you're not reaching enough people, then obviously you're not going to have the impact that you think you had. So SDR BDR work that way. Like it's a game of numbers. It's a one-to-many exercise. So you have to contextualize it for the specific use case. I don't know. That was my take.
I agree with you from a sales perspective. Like activity is what's gonna like lay the foundation down. I think where we struggle in is taking this one-size-fits-all approach and applying it to product marketing. The value, like what Eric mentioned earlier, the value of product marketing is creating a volume of content. And that is enough to justify our value. And you hear it in some conversations, Pranav, where I was talking to a product marketing peer and they mentioned, well, I built a sales enablement hub and that's what's influencing the sales numbers. I'm like, well, how? They're like, well, they're using it. I'm like, in what way? Like, do they just click it, open it? So I think like we've kind of warped ourselves in this belief that if I create a piece of collateral and it's used on a sales call and that helps and that closes a deal, that collateral closed the deal. No, it didn't. It might have influenced it, but no one buys because of a one-pager.
Back on this and say, not everything needs to be measured. So again, this is a counter, point, and might be surprising to some, why Pranav, that the guy who builds measurement software, is saying that not everything needs to be measured, because it really doesn't need to be measured, right? Like if you look at the best teams, like, am I going to go measure the productivity of my creative team? No, I'm not. Like that's not a good use of time. It's not a factory, right? The best advertising copy creative does not come under factory environments. So just like that, some of the product marketing work is like that. It's true creative work that, a great pitch deck, you're just going to know. Your sales teams are going to be like, holy shit, Zach, this is amazing. And that's good enough. The trouble is when you come from a defensive mindset and a defensive situation where you're having to prove your worth, because, again, the hippos don't understand what product marketing is and product marketing does. And so if you find yourself in that situation, I can appreciate some marketers coming up with these activity metrics as a way to prove their worth. But I think the motivation and just it's a symptom of the dysfunction. And so I don't blame anybody for doing it. I'm like blaming the system that let it happen. And my advice to those folks would be like, hey, if that's the situation you're in, two things are going to happen. One is you are either going to be out of a job in about 18 months. You yourself are going to find yourself feeling that I'm not adding value. And so might as well change the conversation of the situation proactively rather than just let it to chance and fate. I don't know if that helps, but that's my honest take. Like, you don't have to measure everything. We're hiring our first marketer and salespeople. The way we measure their success is going to be dramatically different from anything I've seen in B2B SaaS. And you need to go towards those type of marketing teams.
Well, then I want to flip that on you. What do you think are the things that people are not measuring that you're dumbfounded by, that you feel like they should be and have to be measuring, and it's just not helping both the product marketing and everyone else on the marketing side of the house?
Yeah. So I've been talking about incrementality and the concept of incrementality for a good part of the last 2 years. And I can tell you that 99% of B2B organizations have no clue about the incrementality of their investments. So if I were to look at your marketing, line item by line item, your budget, you've got a bunch of headcount, you've got a bunch of, what I call sort of creative and production. Those things you don't need to measure the ROI on. That makes no sense. So creative productions, like how much am I paying my web designer and my video producer? Like that is the cost of doing business, right? That is the actual sort of fuel that you're putting into the engine. And the engine is the remaining, let's say that ends up being like 40% of your total budget. And you've got the remaining 60%. And that remaining 60% is spread across your advertisements, your specific SEO investments, your PR investments, and then you have a bunch of channels or mediums that are not consuming any paid dollars, your lifecycle stuff, right? So your emails, your in-app, those are owned channels. So all of that stuff, the 60% that's outside of creative and production, outside of headcount, should absolutely be measured. And that 60% of your marketing budget, most people just stop at your paid channels. They never think about SEO. They never think about PR. They never think about organic social. And the reality is that all of those other things can contribute a significant amount to your pipeline and to your close one. You just don't do it because most marketing leadership just puts them in a separate bucket. And there's no reason to do that. And that's why we exist as a company, is we level the playing field, whether it's, people use all these types of terms, right? In the older times, it was above the line, below the line. It was brand and performance. There was offline, online. It's, the 95-5, right? Whatever you name it, the idea is that you have to understand the entire marketing mix's impact on your business. But again, like, it makes zero sense to look at headcount cost and creative production cost. Like, those are not the variables that you are ramping up or down necessarily. And yeah, so that's my rough take on what you do measure, what you don't measure. And coming back to like the sales asset production, right? I put that in the creative production piece. Like there's no reason why you need to measure that. You do want to measure the success rate of your SDRs and BDRs.
So let's say,
Zach, I gotta steal it then. So if 99%, if you're thinking 99% aren't doing that, what's going to happen if a product marketer listens to this and can actually take some of this advice and make it real? What would that next step be for them to say, you know what? I want to be a change. I want to be one of those 1% outliers and make a big difference in the organization. Other than, go buy your product.
Yeah. The first thing that I say is you have to start with an audit of what you're actually even doing. I kid you not, marketers are not even able to articulate, hey, how many engagements, impressions are we getting across all of our different channels? There are times when we onboard customers and we show them stuff for the first time after like 1 month of the initial onboarding phase. And we say, this is how your impression share is across paid social, paid search, owned channels. And it's shocking. They've never seen that report before. And where you've got everything from, above the line, below the line. Let's just use that because it's a fun terminology. And so the first thing I say is like, go look at everything that you're actually doing across your marketing mix and what those, impressions or engagements are over time. How have they shifted? Is it basically like whatever you're doing, it's been consistent for like 12 months. And so you've not actually made any changes in your marketing mix. You see what I'm saying? We thought that LinkedIn is doing really well. Guess what? The last 12 months, LinkedIn impressions have been flat. So what's going on? Like how can that be true? And we have this perception that we're doing great on LinkedIn, right? Look at the actual data, right? Like visually look at what you're doing in each channel, put it in a spreadsheet. You can put that into Claude and ChatGPT and ask it like, hey, what are the key observations that you get from this data? You don't need to buy fancy software. If you just get the data, put it in a spreadsheet, put it in ChatGPT and ask it like 5 questions, that itself is a great starting point.
So let's say there's a fellow CMO who accidentally stumbled on the podcast because they were trying to listen to marketing scientists instead. And they fall into one of your 4 data pitfalls, which is cherry picking what you're sharing here so far. And I hear oh, creative is the cost of doing business, but I don't want to do an audit. My sales pipeline is on life support. Let's do a creative rebrand to increase our enterprise footprint. I hear a chuckle. I'm curious to hear your reaction here. Do rebrands really revitalize the organization? Is it something worth measuring? Because I feel like product marketers at times get thrown into the rebrand mix of putting on new gloss of paint, but nothing's really changed.
Yeah, I think there was a good post from Elena. She's like the meme goddess
Yes.
on LinkedIn. I don't know why I am blanking on her last name, but she's awesome.
I know she's at growth at Dropbox now, I believe.
Yeah. And she's advised companies like Miro, Amplitude, all
Elena
the biggest
Verna.
brands. Verna, that's right, Elena Verna, and she's an investor in Paramark as well. So shout out to her. She said something, right? Like she's never seen a rebrand actually work. Like there are always exceptions, but like rule of thumb, you'd be lucky if you just break even, which means nothing breaks in your funnel. That's the target. So my honest take, I don't think rebrands are necessary. There are some cases where you might have to do them. I'll give you an example. There was a point of time where the company that I was at, we were going through I am the one who initiated a major rebrand. And for all types of very coincidental reasons, we did not end up actually doing it. But the hypothesis there was our name itself was the product. And what I mean by that is we had captured the market for the thing that we said we would capture the market. And now we're like, where are we going to get the next level of growth from? And the name became a hindrance. So the hypothesis here was not about changing, we're not resonating with the market. No. We're going to launch these 5 new products that are great additions, but our name is literally a hindrance to those 5 other products because it's so specific to this one feature that we built. And so you have to have a hypothesis of why are you even doing the rebrand. If you say that you're not resonating with enterprise, what's the proof point? What's the evidence? Have you gone and talked to enterprise people? Have they expressed anything about your messaging that's not resonating? Why can't we fix it with messaging itself? Why do we need a rebrand, right? Is the right starting point. And then if you come in and say like, yeah, we've got all the proof points to say a rebrand is the only way we can achieve it, go for it.
I love the hypothesis. I'm done. I'm like in the quick 46 minutes, you transformed this virtual recording studio into a virtual weight room, and I'm cooked.
Fantastic. I'm glad.
Yeah, this was awesome. I'm already feeling like taking some stuff back and having some interesting conversations. I'd say, as we sign off here, we're definitely, want to make sure you have some space. So, other than catching you on LinkedIn, got anything else going on? Got anything else cooking, or anything else you want to let our audience know about before we let you go?
No, it's great. So go check out the Marketing Scientists podcast. That's the podcast that I host. I just finished recording this morning with Kerry Cunningham from Sixth Sense. He is their lead analyst, and he spent a bunch of time at Forrester. And we had a great conversation about all things third-party intent, first-party intent, all that fun stuff. So yeah, Marketing Scientists, that's the podcast. Go check it out.
We're just going to put your name as a co-host for this episode to drive the listeners from your podcast to us.
Love it. I don't know if my audience is bigger than your audience, so there we go.
We'll measure it, but we'll ask for your discretion first to see if it's worthy to be measured.
And
Eric, you're on mute, bro. Hashtag season 5.
Dude, I hit the space button like a rookie. But I just want to say to everyone else here who isn't familiar, I was lucky enough to listen to a presentation with our guest, 9 months ago-ish. And I've been thinking about it ever since, and how, we really need to, do a better job in measurement and what we measure. So now that I know that Paramark is actually live, I suggest everyone go check out the website, maybe get on a demo, see if it's a good fit, because I'm really bullish that it can do a lot for us and make us look a lot better in our roles.
Just write down that you're coming from We're Not Marketers. That your mission will be done.
I'll give you 99%, he said. But in all fairness, another great episode of We're Not Marketers. And we will catch you guys next time.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMM.